Testing. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to an after lunch presentation. This is my favorite time to present because everybody's exhausted and so on and so forth. So I really appreciate everybody being here. I'm Tess Fields. I'm the executive director of HomeShare Oregon. And we're just really excited to be a part of this conference, and so grateful to the work of Housing Oregon and frankly everybody at the conference. As you know, we're in a humanitarian crisis, and there's such amazing, brilliant, fantastic people working hard to expand access to housing. So I wanted to start with, this is Keiira Pham, one of my panelists, and she is a home sharer. She's actually my housemate. And so roped her into being here to talk a little bit about her experience in her home sharing journey. And then also on the Zoom, we have Amy Ford, who is the Senior Vice President of Silvernest and has a national perspective on home sharing America. And so she's going to go first and kind of give you guys the national perspective, talk about the partnerships, the movement, where it's at, and then I'm going to go, and then we'll have Keiira speak, and then we'll take time for questions. So Amy, with that, you want to go ahead?
Sure thing. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Tess, for letting me go first. I'm over here on the East Coast, and so I needed to go first because I have little kiddos to pick up from aftercare. So I'm really happy to be here today, and this is actually really special because Silvernest, which is an online home sharing platform, embarked on a journey to figure out how to take the technology that was built and put it in the hands of community organizations around the country and allow them to build out programming around it based on whatever parameters were important to them. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But HomeShare Oregon was our very first partner, like over 3 years ago. And they have led the way, and we've learned so much from them. And hopefully they've learned just a bit from us. And it's been a wonderful and evolving partnership. So you'll also see some of my stuff is not Silvernest branded today. That's because late breaking, I started my own LLC, but I'm still very closely connected with my Silvernest crew and friends, and am extremely passionate about the home sharing movement. I spent most of all of my career in working with older adults, and that was the original mission and vision for Silvernest. It's not only available to older adults now, but that was the co-founder's original vision, was looking at the housing crisis facing older adults specifically, and those that wanted to age in community, and how could we figure out ways to essentially democratize access to this solution in a scalable way. And so I'm going to talk just a little bit about, I know that Tess also has some materials from a national perspective, but I think what's kind of fascinating is we talk about housing inventory shortage. It's the lingo, you know, in the housing space. We always talk about the inventory shortage, and that we're short, you know, a couple million homes, et cetera. But I really think that there's an opportunity to redefine what we mean when we say housing inventory. And we don't necessarily mean single family units or multifamily housing. There are roughly 33 million empty bedrooms across this country, and they're hidden in plain sight. Essentially, they're in people's finished basements and finished attics, and you know, down the hall where the kids used to live, and they're available. And we haven't quite figured out how to tap into them in an efficient and scalable way. And I think we are starting to chip away at that, and we're really seeing growing focus and a growing attention to this solution, as there's just no way that building can keep up with the demand. It's obviously a key solution, but we have to bring different ideas to the table. We talk about the shared economy. I think that it's relevant to reflect on the sharing economy growth. You know, I think, you know, 10 years ago, none of us would have, you know, jumped in a stranger's car for a ride to the airport. And now those solutions are so embedded in our society that airports, massive airports in huge cities, actually have the words Uber painted on the wall. I mean, talk about really infusing a brand and a solution into our day-to-day lives. We use Uber as a verb. We use Lyft as a verb. So when we think about the comfort level of Americans to share things, I think we've been picking away at this. There's parking space sharing in cities where if you don't need it, you share it, you rent it out. There are companies that offer storage share and offer a way for people to open up their garage that they're not using or extra space they're not using for storage. And sharing a home and home sharing is really the next big frontier in the shared economy. It's potentially the most complex and one that takes a bit of cultural shift to become adapted to, but we've become more and more comfortable with this concept of leveraging existing resources that we have to support ourselves and to support others in the community. When we think about the impact of home sharing, I think I often call it the unicorn of housing solutions because it is so incredibly versatile. Before coming to Silvernest, I was with the National Council on Aging, focused on financial wellness programs for older adults, but in particular with a focus on housing for older adults and home equity utilization. I also ran a national foreclosure prevention program with a partnership with HUD and Fannie Mae. And this national model allowed us to learn a lot from housing counselors across the country who were doing foreclosure prevention, homelessness prevention. And the conversations we would often have on our monthly calls where we would, get together, we provide resources and support and training, was the exhaustion in the housing counselors' voices that I'm sure many of you in attendance can appreciate, knowing this is your field, that they've worked the budget 6 ways to Tuesday. They've accessed benefits that someone may be eligible for. They've called the loan servicer to try to figure out maybe a way to reconfigure their mortgage payment. They've figured out if there's any property tax relief programs available to them. They've pulled in the church, they've pulled in the family and friends, and the budget just doesn't work. And how exasperating that feels for a housing counselor. And it was really at that time, over the years of running that program, that I met the co-founder of Silvernest and the concept of home sharing. Obviously, it's not a new concept. I mean, people have been sharing space in different forms for centuries, but this idea that we could make it more accessible through a piece of technology supplemented through local partnerships was seemingly, like I said, a bit of a unicorn solution, because with one activity, with one intervention, you can actually solve quite a few challenges. So we're thinking about the prevention of foreclosure. We're thinking about the prevention of homelessness. I think I also worked at NeighborWorks America for many years, working in the training division, training housing counselors. And right after the housing crisis of 2008. And, I think we would talk about it in homelessness in the context of like chronic homelessness a lot. But really, when we reflect on the prevention conversation, the amount of people who are hanging with a friend, a long stay with a relative, a couch of a neighbor, who are, one paycheck away from losing their home, that home sharing is a very powerful prevention strategy. It can also reduce isolation. I think in the older adult space, we've always talked about social isolation. And during COVID, I think that all of us of any age and any kind of circumstance felt the pain of isolation in a very clear sense. And so there's been a renewed focus to we need others, we need our community, we need human interaction. And how do we prevent the negative effects of isolation, which are significant. And I won't go into that because that's not this presentation, but I think AARP in particular has put out a lot of good data about the mental and physical impact of isolation. We've got an opportunity for passive income for hosts. And I always like to emphasize passive because most all hosts are also still working. They're piecing together a couple of different jobs, or they're retired, but they're still, working a bit on the side, and they can still do all of that. They can still travel. They can still be with family. They can still try new things and have new experiences and earn that passive income, as well as, of course, more affordable housing options for renters, because renting and home sharing is more affordable than your own place. And not to mention shared expenses. You only need one toaster, you only need one of a lot of these things. And there's even a whole other area to explore that with my time at Silvernest, we never quite had the time to explore this, but the environmental impact of home sharing is significant as well. Shared energy resources, other shared utilities. It's another interesting and I think ripe area for research. And then when we think about stressed markets, there's always really important conversations about workforce housing. People cannot afford to live near where they work, especially when we think about students who are in grad school, teachers, nurses. People are traveling over an hour each way because they have to live on the outskirts of any given expensive market. And when someone can home share, maybe they can live right on the bus line. They can live right on the metro line. They can afford to be closer and reduce those costs. And ironically, if you wrap that back around to the environmental impact as well, fewer people driving cars, more people taking public transit. Obviously, it all, again, I just keep harping on this idea of a unicorn, because so rarely is there one solution that checks so many, amazing, fascinating boxes. So over the last 3.5 years with Silvernest, we've been looking at and learning a lot about a technology paired with a person-centered approach. So silvernest.com is a publicly available website for anybody to use as an individual. But the team had done some pilots with, for example, Teach for America, maybe 4 years ago, where they said, can we work with a nonprofit or a government entity to help them address housing issues for their particular population, while leveraging our site to do some of the heavy lifting of what that might take. And based on some success there, we started, and that's when I joined, to start building out what would a partnership strategy be for a technology company that does this work. And as I mentioned at the beginning, HomeShare Oregon was one of our brave first partners at the table, and we learned a lot together over the years. But I think the core model is usually some bucket of funding available from somewhere, right? Maybe it's state, maybe it's private grants, whatever the case may be. And that goes to a .org, a .gov, some sort of social service entity is pretty typical. And then they can work with Silvernest or the technology-enabled solution to build out a local program with parameters around it that are important to them. So what that looks like is, we've got the tech piece takes the heavy lifting off of the local partner. They're not running background checks individually for people. They're not doing paper pencil matching. They're not individually running identity verification. And they're not, producing a home sharing agreement with folks, where the piece of technology can streamline a lot of that. But then when you take it down to next level, there are some people that can work through that infrastructure on their own. And there are some people that can't, and there are some people that probably lie somewhere in the middle. And so when we think about our .org partners or our .gov partners, such as HomeShare Oregon, that on the ground client services personnel, kind of an umbrella term, might be a program manager, might be a program associate, might be a social worker. It really kind of runs the gamut, but the kinds of things that they can do to encourage and to sort of quell some nerves on a one-to-one basis is really special and a huge advantage to pulling people through the process and helping them understand you're not alone in considering this solution. We have hundreds of people, thousands of people that are doing this all the time. They can help with those prep discussions. Some of our Silvernest partners over the years did home visits. Some of them do sit down and do assistance with the technology. Some do Zooms to help with technology, because many people can sit and set up a profile, and some people struggle, or uploading photos. There can be a bit of a learning curve. And some examples of how that plays out. There was a partnership with a VA medical center in Colorado, where there was a team of social workers who were, they're already in the veterans' homes, providing other types of programs, services, and benefits. And so they were able to add that to a component of their program because they were just leveraging something they were already doing. Not all programs have that capacity to do those home visits. There were some partnerships with, for example, area agencies on aging. We had a couple of those, and they have parameters around the money that they get. Their funding is from the Older Americans Act, and they have to support people 60 and older, or adults with disabilities. And so their parameters were around age. And so we worked together to figure out sort of an approach and a protocol that kept their parameters that were important to them or their funders in mind, while allowing them to take some of the heavy burden of running the program off the table. Oh, I jumped ahead. I talked ahead of my slide here, but this was basically just explaining some examples of ways where a local organization knows the needs of its community and can design a program with the parameters required to scale a home sharing solution. Another one ripe for growth is HUD housing counseling organizations. They're doing foreclosure prevention. They're doing rental assistance counseling. They're doing pre-purchase and post-purchase counseling. So people who are new homeowners, we've had so many discussions over the years with realtors and others who have said, people get into their homes for the first time, and then you've just sunk all your cash, getting into this home for the first time. This is a way to hedge a little against the cost of homeownership while you get your feet under you, recover from that big down payment, and ensure that maybe you have some extra to furnish the house, or, do some painting or repairs that you might need to do. There's all these different ways that, again, come back unicorn, where the solution can fit in. And regardless of the mission of the organization, we're boosting income, we're reducing expenses, we're preventing housing challenges, we're providing housing stability, and reducing isolation. And again, I could probably think of more benefits and impact, but those are sort of top of mind. And I think that what's been fascinating as well is, there's been resources available at federal, state, municipal levels through foundations or others that are very focused on COVID recovery, or who are focused specifically on housing shortage. And home sharing fits the bill for solving a lot of that. So some of the partners come to the table and say, we're specifically interested in demonstrating outcomes related to reducing isolation. And so how would we do that? A pre-survey and a post-survey 6 months later, looking at self-reported isolation levels, et cetera. There's just a lot of creativity that can be applied when you have a model where there's technology underpinning, and then that local knowledge and that local influence into kind of how this is implemented. Also, joining the movement I think, Tess, hopefully you will agree. I mean, we hope that everyone, I can't see anybody in the room, so, but I hope that the room is full of smiles and nods about becoming a champion for home sharing in your community and across the country and in your state. It is really booming. And I think it's a solution that is versatile and meaningful and makes true economic and social impact in a very measurable way. And really, multi-sector approaches they're the golden egg, right? I mean, we bring private, public, and government entities all together to look at a solution, and everybody does what they do best. That's really where we see the biggest and scalable impact. So that's all I had for you today.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
Joining us from DC. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go into the local story here and talk just a little bit about, what our experience has been over the last 3 years. If we can pull up. Okay. I'm so not tech savvy, so I always get anxious around this part. I just anticipate something is going to happen. There we go. So about 3 years ago, we launched a tiny program, a HomeShare program, under a larger organization called Oregon Harbor of Hope. And as we were looking at the affordable housing crisis, we were literally asking ourselves, what else can we be doing? Like, what else can be done? We're leading with production. We've, run numerous ballot initiatives to provide funding for, wraparound services, et cetera. But the problem keeps outpacing the current solutions. And so we came across, can you do next slide? There we go. We came across a HomeShare program model that was running in about 60 cities across the country. But I kind of wanted to go through a couple of statistics first, which I'm sure most of you in the room are familiar with. But the national average for rental availability is a 95% occupancy rate. The Census Bureau, 3.8 million renters will likely be evicted in the next 2 months. Why the rental crisis keeps getting worse, the rental crisis keeps getting worse. In Oregon, we have a 96.7% occupancy rate. I'll go into those statistics a little bit more later, but for every one apartment, there's 14 applicants, okay? In February of 2022, the US Census estimated that about 36.8% of the population in Oregon said that they were behind on their rent or their mortgage. One of the biggest concerns that I had when I initially stepped into this and started to learn about some of the issues that we were facing is about 40% of Oregon seniors are self-reporting that they're at risk of foreclosure. One of the things that we consistently do, throughout the state of Oregon is we really, really focus on the homeless population. And I found this was put together, this statistical slide was put together by former Governor John Kitzhaber, who's a big HomeShare proponent. But in terms of the space where we're looking at for home sharing, we've got about 557,000 households that are cost burdened at, spending more than 30% of their income on rent. 172,000 of those folks are seniors. And then we've got about 250,000 folks who are severely housing cost burdened or spending more than 50% of their income on their mortgage. And about 77,000 of those folks are seniors. And so what we really started to focus on was how do we prevent the folks in the top part of this triangle from dropping down into the homeless population. Because as we all know, they're one paycheck away, they're one check away, one health crisis away from basically being in a situation where they can't afford where they're living. And I think also I kind of want to expand on this a little bit specifically with our senior citizens. There are some senior citizens that are spending between 70-80% of their Social Security income on their mortgage or their rent. And when you think about inflation right now and the cost of food, the cost of prescription drugs, God forbid you want to buy your grandkid a birthday card. Folks are really left with nothing. They're left with nothing to basically have a healthy and happy existence. What they do have is a roof over their head, right? And that's the main thing that they're just desperately trying to hang on to. 1 in 3 homeowners in Oregon are housing cost burdened. Just another way to look at those numbers. And again, 40% of Oregonians over the age of 65 say that they're at risk of losing their homes. In terms of humanitarian crisis, we've got about 15,000 homeless people. Again, for every one apartment that's available, there's 14 renters. And when somebody does actually fall into homelessness, it costs the state the county and the city approximately $40,000 per year per person to provide the services necessary to help that person get out of that situation. And this, we're all familiar with that. We have housing navigators, there's rental subsidies, so on and so forth. And so, again, as we continued to look at these numbers, we were like, what else can we be doing? And so we looked at the Oregon census and learned there's 1.5 million owner-occupied homes across the state of Oregon with a spare bedroom available. And when we saw that number, we were like, if we could incentivize just 2% of that population, we could house 30,000 people affordably and potentially keep 30,000 people in their homes with no new infrastructure. So, the average rent for a home sharing arrangement is between $700 and $900 a month, depending on what part of the state that you're in. As you guys are aware, the average apartment in some of our urban centers is closer to $1,800 a month. And even, I saw a big write-up in PBJ the other day that a developer was talking about how they were super excited because they had just developed 250 units of affordable housing, but a studio was going for $1,200. So, again, how we're defining affordable housing at this point in time, also I think we have to look at, because I would argue that $1,200 is not affordable for most people. Again, we asked ourselves, what's the impediment here? Like, why, we all, when we were in college, we had roommates, we doubled up, we shared expenses. Like, what happened? Why are people, even when they're at severe risk of losing the homes that they love, why is there a barrier? Like, what is the barrier? And so we did some research, and we basically found that the biggest barrier to home sharing is simply that it's not the cultural norm. So back in the 30s and 40s, people took in boarders all the time, right? This was a ubiquitous cultural practice. It was actually odd if you didn't have somebody crashing in your house, basically. And we can remember, stories like favorite American TV icons like Andy Griffith and Aunt Bee were home sharers. The Odd Couple were home sharers. So you've seen bits and pieces of this historically, like laid out through popular culture. But again, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, when local governments and popular culture really started pushing single-family homes, single-family home, 1 yard, big house, done, then that practice of taking in renters, really fell away. And it hasn't made a comeback until basically recently. So on all of that premise and with all of that kind of intelligence leading the way, HomeShare Oregon was founded, and our mission is to increase access to affordable housing, basically one spare bedroom at a time. There we go. When we launched, we launched with 3 goals. We needed to keep it really simple. The first goal, obviously, is to change the cultural norm. And so our public education campaigns are aggressive, they're exciting, and they really talk about the fact that, home sharing is something that is effective, it's good for people, the more people who do it, the better. Really, goal 1 is the Hoot Hoot Don't Pollute campaign, or the Smokey the Bear Put Out Your Fire campaign. It's really about culturally normalizing home sharing, collecting stories, and letting people know that this is the right thing to do for all kinds of different reasons. As Amy touched on previously in her presentation, home sharing is not just about expanding access to housing. This is about protecting the environment. It's about protecting clean air and clean water. It's about, basically intergenerational living. It's about having poor families and wealthy families around one another and being able to take advantage of things. It's about density. It just kind of goes, it helps provide, or promote social determinants of health in our seniors. So there's a lot of secondary benefits to home sharing aside from just increasing access to housing. The second goal of our organization is to provide more direct support to people who want to home share, but they're nervous about it and they just want what I call light touch case management. And so, people like me or, a lot of the folks in the audience today, we could, jump on the HomeShare Oregon website, we could sign up, we could find our housemate, we could follow all of the instructions about landlord-tenant law, and this is how you do a lease, and et cetera. But for some of our seniors or people that are, women over the age of 60, or anybody over the age of 60, 65, they just want some additional counsel. You know, what does this mean? What if this happens? How do I manage this? Can you just look over this lease agreement and make sure that I filled it out correctly? So it's really just about, you know, somebody proofreading their work, right? And sort of helping them through the process. And these kinds of case management situations can vacillate anywhere from, you know, I can't find my spam folder to get that email that you sent me, all the way down to, can you come out and meet the person who's going to move in with me, because I'd like you to help facilitate a conversation. The third goal of the organization is to engage in advocacy efforts that incentivize home sharing and to challenge public policy initiatives that disincentivize home sharing. And I'll get to that in a little bit. In terms of impact, you know, Governor Kotek declared a homeless state of emergency, thank you so much, and unveiled a $130 million budget. And I think in terms of finances here, this is something that's really, really important, because we need to lead with production. But as we all know, you know, in order to build a single unit of affordable housing, it costs between $350,000 and $400,000 per door. Right? And that's whether it's an apartment or a single family home. And that's simply because of land supply, construction costs, permitting processes, you know, on and on and on it goes. And, you know, with home sharing, you know, what we found is that, you know, we've had about 1,300 folks sign up and several hundred matches now. And at this point in time, we're doing that for about $3,000 per person. And so when you start to compare the cost of building a unit, which we absolutely need to do, but also for just a minor investment, how effective home sharing can be, then it's kind of an apple or oranges things. It really is, you know, incentivizing home sharing, encouraging home sharing, getting people excited about it and comfortable with it really is the most cost-effective thing that we can do to increase access to housing. Our goal at this point in time in Oregon anyway, for the next fiscal year, is to house 3,000 people at $500 per person. I kind of got ahead of myself again. I just went over that. The services that HomeShare Oregon provides is we provide free technology services for the matching, free background screens, home sharing agreement templates, referrals for other supportive services specific to HomeShare Oregon clients, direct client support by HomeShare Oregon coaches. So we started to do some really good volunteer recruitment strategies where there's peer-to-peer coaching. So one HomeSharer talks to another HomeSharer, this is what I did, this is my best practice, this is what I look out for, and just really kind of building like a movement and a camaraderie around the practice, right? So that, because our goal, what we want to have happen is, oh my God, it's so weird that you're renting a spare bedroom to someone. We want it to become, you're not renting a spare bedroom to someone, why not? You've got extra space, you know? So we really want it to become like something that most people are practicing and are doing. And we also do that through, we have community events, we do neighborhood association presentations, we go to Elks Clubs, we go to senior facilities, anywhere where we can find our target market is women over the age of 50 that have either experienced the death of a spouse or divorce. And there's a lot of a reason for that. And then obviously we have a lot of senior women, and this really kind of drills down, not to completely digress, but into systemic sexism. So back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, women were expected to stay home and raise their families and manage their households and do that work, but they weren't paid for that work. And they weren't collecting Social Security when they were doing that work. And so now fast forward 30 years, and you know, men over the age of 65 are getting $300 to $400 per month more in Social Security benefits than women are. And so that's why women, senior women, are the fastest growing population of homeless people in the country. So that's just another thing I get really passionate about and I get angry about. So we do see a lot of women who are more open to home sharing at this point if they can figure out a way to do it well and intelligently and feel secure when they're doing it at this point. So in terms of our impacts and what we've been able to do over this last year and a half that we've been up and running, we've had 13 homeowners register to rent spare bedrooms. And in our world, that basically leaves 1,300 apartments for other people in need. Again, not everybody is conducive to home sharing, right? But our goal is for people who are conducive to home sharing that they choose that kind of a living situation first, so that more apartments and other housing options are available for other people who may not be conducive to home sharing. We've had over 4,000 home seekers come through the HomeShare Oregon program looking to identify housing through the HomeShare model. And originally I was really disturbed by that number because I really, we continue to market to homeowners, because homeowners are sitting on our underutilized housing stock, right? Without homeowners, we don't have any housing supply. So we spend most of our public education dollars really talking to homeowners and galvanizing them. But at the end of the day, I wasn't as upset by this number when I also saw the number that for every apartment, there's 14 people applying. So right now, for home seekers or homeowners, it's about 5 to 1 or 4 to 1 is our data. So we're doing better than 14 to 1. So I feel good about that. We have about 10,000 people currently that are trafficking the website to educate themselves on the HomeShare model. We are flooded with emails and phone calls and questions constantly. How do I do this? It takes people a while to think through the process, and we really encourage that. I've had people that I presented to a year and a half ago that have called me like 6 weeks ago and said, I saw you present a year and a half ago, and I finally decided I'm going to HomeShare. Sometimes they just need to really think through the process. What does it look like? They want to talk to other people who've done it, et cetera. So the more people that traffic our website and that we talk to, we get really, really excited. We are active in 34 of the 36 counties, so it's a statewide organization, but we've actually talked to and provided direct support in 34 of the 36 counties across the state. And then we've also piloted a workforce housing program at Providence Hospital on the North Coast. And this is because, as we all know, workforce housing is a huge issue, and Providence Hospital has actually brought in a HomeShare program within their own company in the North Coast to start encouraging Providence employees to rent out spare bedrooms to each other, and to also galvanize community members to rent out spare bedrooms to Providence employees. So our current focus right now, we're pretty excited because we've had we've basically just kind of exploded onto the housing scene, and we've had some really good data and numbers, and so we're going to keep going. But for our current focus, we want to pass federal and state legislation which absolves the income tax liability for homeowners willing to rent spare bedrooms for $1,000 or less per month long term. We want to create grant programs with the state and local counties to provide small grants for minor home remodeling projects for people who are willing to HomeShare at 70% market rate for 5 years, whether it's an extra bathroom, an extra door, new locks, or carpet in a spare bedroom. So I get a lot of I think this is so brilliant, y'all, and I'm really excited to share this idea with you because, I just came out of an ADU. I keep hearing about ADUs and tiny homes and all this kind of stuff. And I looked into having an ADU at one point, and I was like, okay, that will never happen. I couldn't make it pencil. It was too expensive for me to put in an ADU. But with the folks that we're talking to every day, these homeowners, they're like, you know what, Tess, I really want to HomeShare, but I just want an extra door put in so that they have their own entrance. I had one woman who was a senior who not only wanted to HomeShare, she needed to HomeShare, and for financial reasons, or she was going to lose her house. And she said, I've got this great spare bedroom, it has its own bathroom, but my cats got back there and they ruined the carpet. And I don't have the money to replace the carpet. It was $3,000. And she's like, I would be willing to HomeShare if I can just get this carpet replaced. So other people have said, I live in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. I'd love to HomeShare, but I just need an extra bathroom put in. So I think there's real opportunities for counties specifically to provide grants of up to $20,000 to people who are willing to HomeShare to do minor remodeling projects, and then to do, accountability for that. So we're excited to try to explore a pilot program. We've been talking to folks out in Clackamas County specifically to see if we can make something like that happen. We want to ensure that government programs for home improvements are provided to homeowners willing to HomeShare first. So when we see initiatives like, the government is giving a grant to add solar to your house, or the government is giving a grant to update your heating, or the government is giving this to update whatever, we really want home sharers to be targeted first because they're housing people, they're housing more than just themselves. And so I think it kind of goes to what Amy Ford was touching on earlier about being efficient with our resources. And, when it comes to energy, when I was just in a meeting with PG&E not too long ago about new developments in the energy grid and the strain on the energy grid with these new housing developments and how we're going to meet the energy demands. And it was just going on and on and on. And all I could think to myself was, if more people HomeShared, there would be less stress on the grid, right? So again, it's like a side benefit, but it's just something else that I'm playing with, that I'm toying with. Kind of like no different than when we were trying to encourage people to what is that, car? Yes, and then we built those lanes where, and if there's less than 2 people in the car, you get pulled over and get a massive ticket, so I mean, obviously there was a public investment there to encourage people to carpool. So I'm curious about how we can bird dog on that a little bit, how we can piggyback on that idea. The other thing is, we want to launch HomeShare America, and this is going to be happening, fortunately, sooner rather than later. So it'll be basically like an affiliate model. We'll have HomeShare America, and then we want to have HomeShare Oregon, HomeShare Washington, HomeShare California, because the demand that I'm finding across the country for people to bring home sharing to communities in a way that can scale, that can provide, some case management services, et cetera, is just somewhat extraordinary. And in addition to that, just the ideas consistently are just going crazy. There's so much enthusiasm because people really see it as an opportunity not only to increase access to housing, but to also tap into homeowners' natural altruistic tendencies. So if a homeowner has a specific passion for children aging out of the foster care system, how do we make that heart to home? So that they're actually providing, their home, and that's who they're housing, and how do we even define it further and make sure that people are compatible, and we're really just, kind of making a difference. I think from our perspective, we cannot build our way out of this crisis. We just can't, and we're gonna have to come up with more innovative solutions to get people housed. And so that's what we're really focused on and working to do. We were really excited because we partnered with the Portland State University Capstone Project. I got a PSUer in the room now. And they were able to survey our participants that had participated in the program in Multnomah County. So I want to preempt this by saying that the data sample is fairly small. I can't even remember what it is. It's pretty small. But what I love about this is that it really, really let me know that we were going in the right direction. So, the goal of the organization is to keep people in the homes that they love and to expand access to housing, right? So they did a survey, and we found that so these were all homeowners that were surveyed, and 30%, or basically 50% agree that this has really benefited their lives. 78% said they would definitely consider sharing their house again in the future if they weren't currently sharing it. I love this slide because literally over 75% of the people participating in this program are over the age of 55. So when we talked about this assumption, because of specifically where our seniors are headed with higher property taxes, inflation, trying to hang on to the homes they love. I mean, y'all, 21% of people who are home sharing in Multnomah County right now that we surveyed were over the age of 75. I just think that's cool. And I love that. And then, 26% is between 65 and 74, and then 25% is between 55 and 64. I just think that says a lot about the challenges that our seniors are facing and are going to continue to face, and how, basically making home sharing a part of the cultural norm and providing support services around home sharing is really the fastest and most cost-effective solution that we can do. Because once a senior goes homeless, never, never, never should that happen, ever. So I love this slide because it was like, oh my gosh, we're doing it right, 63% are women, which we anticipated. And in terms of race, 62% of our participants are white or Caucasian, which when I first looked at that, I was like, but what I love is that, when you add up BIPOC community members, it comes to about 27%, so African American, Latino, other multiracial, Asian. So even though, we have work to do there, but in terms of, almost 30% of our participants being from the BIPOC communities, I thought that was good. And there is opportunity, I think, as we go national and as we continue to expand, to be able to address, part of the challenge that we have obviously is like more white people own homes than BIPOC community members, right? And so we're spending time right now trying to correct that problem. Well, part of the way that you can correct that problem is by allowing home sharing to be a part of the lending deal. So right now, if you say, I'm buying a home, if you can't qualify by yourself to pay that mortgage, then you can't qualify for the house. But if you say, even if you say, I'm gonna rent that spare bedroom, it's gonna be rental income, that's how I'm gonna do it. If we can pass some kind of legislation, I don't know what it looks like, it's out of my wheelhouse, but if we can pass some kind of legislation that says you have to basically accept that, then we can expand access to housing for BIPOC community members or lower income people. So the other way that we're looking at getting to this too is for our community outreach stuff. We target neighborhoods that are high in homeownership rates and also high poverty rates. And so this is also helping us address, some of these numbers and these disparities. So that's super exciting. Annual household income. I love this slide too because again, it's like, yes, we're getting where we need to be. 18% that were willing to respond to this make $60,000 a year or less, right? So that makes sense to me. And then 18% are making less than $40,000 a year. So I feel like, and then 14% are making less than 20. So I feel pretty strongly that 18 and 14, that's our seniors. That's our folks who are on Social Security. Have you received any Social Security benefits or disability income in the past 12 months? 53% of our participants of our homeowners said yes. So this kind of goes into how it works, and which I can kind of go into later. I don't know how interesting you guys will find this, but you sign up and you create a profile, you review matches, you find a housemate, you complete a background check, you create a home sharing agreement, and then you begin your journey. And then we're kind of with you every step of the way with people, varying and sundry questions, whatever people have, we try to respond and we try to answer them. These are two folks that this is one of my first matches actually. Tony is a 72-year-old woman and needed some help around the house, and she's got all these organic gardens and a chicken coop and like you name it. And then Josh, the person sitting next to her, was a single dad with two boys, 3 and 5 years old. He was living in a hotel. He was a dishwasher at a local restaurant, has a learning disability, and was about to be homeless with his kids. And Tony, surprisingly, when she called me, she had no technology skills, so she couldn't actually use our online resources, but she said, I really want kids again in my house. I'm a grandmother, and my grandkids, I don't get to see them as much, and I have all these fun things in my yard, and I want children in my home. And so it just really worked out well because she needed some assistance to be able to stay in her house, like taking out the trash and things like that, and he needed a really affordable place to live. So what can you do? Consider home sharing for yourself. I don't know how many people in here are homeowners or how many homeowners you know, but if you are sitting on a spare bedroom and you're not using it, I encourage you to give it a shot. And these again are folks that are home sharing. It's grad students, it's college students, it's whatever. So, and there's someone out there for everyone, is what I'm trying to say. Like, regardless of what the compatibility is, there's someone out there to everyone. Donate to HomeShare Oregon. Join HomeShare Oregon Volunteer Action Team. Sign up to receive our newsletter, follow us on social media, and most importantly, help us connect with folks in your community organizations so we can continue to evangelize home sharing, if you will, and get homeowners to get excited about this. And with that, I want to wrap up. I want to introduce Keiira Pham. Keiira Pham is going to share some information with you really briefly. Keiira and her family are immigrants from Vietnam, and they are currently my housemates. And so I wanted her to sort of share with you like her perspective of home sharing and how she came to find me, and just talk a little bit more about that. So please welcome my housemate.
Maybe I just take a seat.
Yeah, you can.
because I did take a lot of notes when she talked, and I really want to share with you because this is so inspiring for me. Like, look back 6 months in this journey, and then when I look at this, I was like, I'm part of the both problem and solution, because I'm gonna just keep paying it forward. When later on, when I have my own home, I'm gonna be like someone, continue like take heritage and do it to others, like us when we just arrived. So my background is like I'm a woman in tech for my whole life, so I'm super independent. Like I work with all coders, they're men in my life. And one day I wake up, I used to work in Google in Singapore and Vietnam. So I wake up and I say, my husband say, hey, we need to go to the States for this goal. And say, okay. And I didn't ask him like, how about the housing crisis in U.S.? I didn't. I wish that I did. So we arrived, and then he said, we're going to stay with a friend of friend, like in Sherwood, she's rich. So we're, okay, sounds good. And then when we came there, I started to realize that, oh, this is the reality, of the whole thing, because we are family. But then we go to the library, we go to a lot of public resources. I'm very active. I reach out to a lot of, I'm a tech person, so I search, research a lot. But then it's just so hard to find, something that is just for my family. Like when I just arrived with a kid, like a 6-year-old, and I can't tell her, this is our home. I can't do it for the first couple of months because it's just so insecure to know that this is it, Even living with your friend, I still can't. So I just wonder why there are so many resources about food and clothes and a lot of in the library. I asked the librarian, why there's no resources about housing? It is the number one goal. How can you, stay on the street with the clothes, but your new clothes, but, no home? It just doesn't make sense. So, and I never share home my entire life either, because I left my home at 17-year-old, work on my own, because I self-taught everything all the way to Google. So I was like, I'm independent. I knew this. But then in so many steps of the way to find home in US, I'm helpless, I'm desperate, I feel exhausted, I want to go back. I used to be in such a comfort zone. So I can imagine that is 200% more difficult for families like me, because everyone rejected, oh, your family, we don't want you in. I just want someone simple. How you define simple? You even live your own, you can't live with your family, right? So I can't imagine it's just how much harder for so many underserved population or student or, people out there homeless, they cannot have the tech skill I have to do all those research. So my experience with HomeShare came up when one of my landlords say, hey, you should check HomeShare Oregon because I live with a family 6 years and you should believe in HomeShare either. I just cannot host you because I already have a family and I expect a new kid coming next month. But I love your family. You should check HomeShare Oregon. And I was like, I come and they asked me to fill in an application. But guess what? This application is not about an apartment. It's about a person that you're going to live with. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I want. I want to know not just her space, but also about her personality, her goals in life, her values, because I'm going to raise a kid around her, So it's important, even with my neighbors, not just someone you share the room or the kitchen. So I love it to feel like college application is long, but it's one of the best actions that I did when I do those also home share, because I invested a lot of time to reflect myself oh, I should live with someone who loves gardening just like me. We both have been working on girls and women empowerment nonprofit before and until now. So I feel like when I read her profile, I kind of think that this is it, because she's even mentioned don't worry, this is good school district. So it's something for me. So because you can't find those things on everywhere, right? It's just a basic need as a parent. I need that security for my kid. So I first meet her, And then she and my kid like hang out like two like little kids. And her kids, yeah, and her kids just going to college. And she said, she keeps saying like, Keiira, I need life back to my life because my kids are not here and the kitchen's empty, it's a beautiful home, and I don't know what to do with it. Just sitting here watching the news and miss my kid. And I said, guess what? I have a 6-year-old energy ball for you. So that's a lot of life for you. Are you ready? So yeah, so they got along, they love reading books. So the first meeting when I met her, I feel like this is it, like the whole journey. So she told me about her, what you just hear, like the whole journey of how HomeShare should not be something weird, but it should be a new cultural norm. And everybody afraid of it because I guess the news just said about the crimes, not the good things anymore. So we're scared. It's everywhere, not just US, but I just want to everyone or me or my husband, he didn't believe it either, but I want everyone to believe in the idea of like, we're human, we used to live in villages, right? Where everybody care for each other, and it takes a village to raise my kid, I guess. So, but that village must share the same values, the same lifestyle, but also you need to compromise your ego because now you share. It happens to everything when you teach your kid to share the toy. It's the same. And then I tell my kid, like, guess what? Even when I settle down, have a better job, bigger salary, I want my kid to understand. I talk to her every day that we're just not, like, we have other options. We need a home. We need a house. But first, we must have a home, you know? So I want my kid to understand this is home, not just house. So this is a housing conference, I know, but the definition of home is just so important because without that, we cannot have all the power to do other good things we want because it's always insecure, you know? Like, we used to not want to come back to our home after a long day because it was a terrible home, like vibe. They are just not our tribe. And you know when you have to come home and meet with someone that you don't want to meet, it's so terrible. And then you can't focus on doing your things anymore. Yeah, I just really believe in this as a movement, and the whole organization inspires so much. So now I'm excited for Tess to bring it even to other states, make it become like a national thing. Yeah, sorry, can't make it brief. Yeah.
Thanks, you guys. Yeah, it's home sharing is great. I do believe when you're doing an organization, you got to walk the talk, and every time you home share, it's an evolutionary process. You get better at it as a homeowner. You learn each time, oh, I'm sharing this, I'm sharing that, and you start to really sort of understand it. And the communication piece and having things in common is so critical. And I mean, Keiira and I can fight. We can laugh, we can, stop it, like, so, and I want that, and my life is enriched. Like the other day I was like, you guys gotta go, I need some space, just go eat somewhere. And then she was like, okay, and then I was like, wait, come back. I changed my mind, so, but anyway, I'll sort of pause there. I know I gave you guys a lot of information, but happy to answer any questions. Yes. So we have a very aggressive public education campaign. We've been up on television probably 4 months out of the year so far, and so, some of it's grassroots organizing that we're out, we're in the community, we're talking to neighborhood associations. We have, a comms manager on board now. We have about 6,000 people on our email list, so we're working really hard to get the word out that way. And then obviously through television and radio as much as possible. So, as we increase funding, we'll increase advertising. Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
I actually walked in here and didn't
Exactly.
And it's kind of funny because, and the way that, she's not in Oregon, she's in Florida, but the way that she connected with her housemate was through the same community-based organization that they both participate in. And so for her, it's like she knew that this person needed a place, and and she knew because she participated in this organization, she's like, oh, okay, well, like, you're vetted, you know?
Right, right.
And so I was wondering if, like, in addition to the application process, you like maybe tap into those networks where the homeowner and the home sharee might already be in the same space but not know it.
Yeah, we really encourage people to, as Keiira articulated, we really encourage people to have a lot of advanced communication first if they don't already know each other, right? And that's to the whole thing, success is really based on compatibility. And so, Keiira puts it best where she says, I'm not looking for a house, I'm looking for a home, right? So, and when people build out their profiles, so for instance, when I put my profile on the HomeShare website, I stated very specifically, I was like, my name's Tess Fields, I'm a pro-choice feminist, I voted for Hillary Clinton, I have a garden, blah, 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 blah. If you're not, a pro-choice feminist, you're probably not gonna get along with me. Well, I got all these really cool people, so it just automatically kind of let people know, because I'm not trying to bring in another, topic or anything, but those are my values, right? They're very important to me. And if I came home and there was, something, on television that other than MSNBC, I would probably be like, this isn't going to work. So we really encourage people to do that. We do encourage people to do Google checks on one another. We do encourage the background screens. And specifically for our seniors, we really encourage them, if they have them, to get their adult children involved. And as a home sharer myself, like, in addition to, just getting, a background, like work or whatever, I always ask for a friend reference or a family reference. And we expect our housemates to do the same thing. Oftentimes people think about the homeowner when it comes to safety, but frankly, we have a lot of women in their 20s that are in college or in grad school, and they want to make sure that whoever they're moving in with is not going to end up locking them in a basement or something, So, it's that piece of it is important, and that's why home sharing is fantastic. It's not for everyone. You need to be decisive. You need to be intelligent. You should not be impulsive, like, hey, come on in. You should take your time. You should do month-to-month lease agreements until you really get to know the person and you feel comfortable with them. But the areas where there's so much flexibility is things like, Tess, we can't give you first and last month rent. I don't care. Tess, I can't give you a security deposit. I don't care. Tess, I don't know if we're going to be here a year or we're going to be here 6 months. I don't care. So, the thing that's so fantastic about home sharing is that what is available through the home share process that is no longer available in the traditional rental market is the opportunity to negotiate. And so when you're applying for an apartment, it's a 17-page application that says, I need this, I need this, I need this, rent's due here, here's your security deposit, here's all the ways you can be evicted, here's all the ways that you can leave or not leave. And you'll get rejected before you even talk to a human being. And with home sharing, it's completely different. If you have somebody, you run a background screen and they're like, well, I had this thing happen in my 20s, I got caught with a joint and it's on there, it's like, I really don't care, and you can have that opportunity to explain, your situation and to ask people to work with you. And so, and when you like the person and they like you, you want to work with them. So, there's certain things that I thought I would not do, but I'm like, but I really like you, so I don't really care that you do it. You know what I mean? So it's just people end up caring about each other. Yeah.
fizzled down and we never got farther. But I think that it'd be great if you communicate again, connect with all the nonprofits, because a lot of us do foreclosure counseling, and that's one of the things for the seniors. You know, we might be able to help them with money from the state to keep their house, but continuing that monthly payment, this would be a great option.
I agree.
Definitely help them. Plus, we all know that a lot of times, you know, there's a lot of seniors that are lonely, and this kills two birds with one stone. Helps them keep their house, and it helps them feel at home again. That's the key word, at home. Just because you're at home, it doesn't make you feel at home all the time, especially, you know, with an empty shell. So it's just my 2 cents.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yes. Hi.
So you talked about for potential homeowners willing to share their home, targeting older people, and that makes sense for so many reasons. But also, like just from my personal experience, we have 8 people in my house right now. 2 are kids, and the rest are adults. 2 living grandmas, and then 2 young adults. But it's been so wonderful for my kids and just
Oh, wow. Yeah.
parents to have the help with carpool and activities. Someone's always home. Like my husband and I can leave town for the weekend and know that other adults are present. Like there's just so many people to interact with my kids and help pick up the slack for working parents. So I feel like you're less likely to have a spare bedroom when you have children in the house, but it's really wonderful to have extra hands and people.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad you spoke up and said that because you're right. We do. A lot of people do focus on seniors when it comes to home sharing, but in fact, it's something that I wish I would have done a long time ago. And I think, there is, to validate your point, there is, I was reading about a social movement about single moms helping single moms now, and they're moving in together to try to support each other and share that responsibility because, like you said, you've got an extra pair of hands. If you've got a kid, you never don't need an extra pair of hands. So thank you for that. Yes.
I have a living situation like that, and actually have good experiences listening, but I want to take away the word. No, asking people for my bedrooms. But what happens if you don't fit with somebody and you have a month-by-month agreement? What's in your side to protect you during these times?
Well, that's why we encourage month-to-month lease agreements, and you would have to give the person 30 days notice. And, that's definitely happened, and we haven't really had a situation where somebody wants to stay in a place where they're not getting along with the other person. So we haven't really had that experience. But to your point, this is why HomeShare Oregon is so incredibly important, is because you really do need to follow the process so that you are protected, you as well as your housemate, from any kind of issue that may arise. If you find that you're not getting along and it's not going to work, and you've got it in your home sharing agreement, it's month to month, you can give them 30 days notice. And so that's really what we recommend. And then doing the front work on the end. I have 2 senior men that are currently home sharing right now, and they started having a month's lease agreement. They were just going to stay together for 30 days. Now they're up to I think 4 months, and then they're thinking about going to a year, but they were both nervous. They both needed to do it, but they were like, we want to make sure that we're not going to get in a situation here that neither one of us can deal with. And I would argue too, or not argue, but suggest as a homeowner, if you have not home shared before, and you're looking at experiencing it, do it initially on the short term. So the first time, I hadn't home shared in a really long time, and then 3 years ago, I guess I started to home share again. But it was right when my kids left, and I just wanted to kind of see what it was going to feel like. And so there was a college student that had been, it was during COVID. She she was a waitress at a local restaurant. Restaurants shut down. She lost her tip money, so she couldn't afford tuition to go back to school, which means that she lost her student housing. And she just needed a place for 3 or 4 months until she could figure out what she wanted to do. And she needed to get her feet underneath her, And so that was really my first step back into it. And I kind of recommend that because you learn a lot about yourself,
I think that I have years of experience having people living in this situation,
Like the eviction process? Yeah, 30 days. You give them 30 days notice and you put it in writing. Yeah.
What other help we have with HomeShare Oregon? I mean, we get in an agreement with them, we follow the steps, but this is happening. Like, we get them the 30 days notice. How is that process?
Well, that with that particular process, we would refer you to an attorney. That would be the best that we could do. We're not going to go in and start negotiating people's individual business agreements because we want people to be empowered to do this themselves. And so that's what we would recommend then at that point, is to contact a mediation person or to contact an attorney. I have not personally we have not had that experience happen, but it's a good question.
Well, I have that similar experiences as well, but I don't know if your graphics are very accurate about the Hispanics, because a lot of Hispanics sometimes live in the same household
Mm-hmm.
or migration situation, and they will report it. There is just a huge need in the Hispanic community about sharing housing. It sounds like you guys already put a lot of thought on this one and make all the rules. It sounds really good. If we know before we do it, but sometimes you end up with somebody that, for some reason, you're not compatible. They get mad at you and they start destroying your house in your face. And obviously, you want to avoid that.
Yeah, and I totally agree. There's always a what if, and I think that's true with anything. And I think that's why it's so important to put the process to work for yourself. Like I said, this is not an impulsive decision. This is not, hey, I met you 5 minutes ago, come stay with me. It's not even, yeah,
That happens to me.
yeah.
Have somebody, and then the kid can just get out of jail, and then I'll let him, stay, and then I'll let him receive a letter, and because he received that letter, and he can prove that he was residing in there, now we getting all this mambo jumbo. That happens in Washington, Vancouver. So sometimes you also need to know some laws.
Well, that's also why a home sharing agreement is really important. Like you have to have a lease agreement. So, we don't suggest that you just let somebody come stay without a lease agreement. And I don't care if it's a family member or if it's, it doesn't matter, because you can get yourself into a situation like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't be nice. Be smart and nice. Good. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming, and I think we're just about. My goodness, we did it. We did it. We did it. We did it. Well, please, you guys, thank you so much. I feel really grateful that you guys came and let people know about HomeShare Oregon. And if you have any other questions or anything, I'll be here for a little bit. Thanks.